The first time she whispered those words, I almost laughed. The last time anyone had tried to tell me how to live my life had been years ago, before grief became my closest companion. But when she quietly admitted that my grandfather had once looked at her with a knowing smile and said that I needed a wife more than I needed another promotion, another paycheck, or another lonely evening, something inside me cracked. My grandfather had been gone for nearly 2 years, yet somehow it felt as if he had reached across time to deliver one final message I had refused to hear. In that single moment, every regret I had buried beneath endless work and silent nights came rushing back, and I realized that the greatest love story of my life might have already begun long before I even noticed it. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible ways destiny changes lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone you care about, and subscribe to Love and Destiny. Your support helps us bring more heartfelt stories that remind us all that hope can appear when we least expect it. For most of my adult life, I believed success could replace happiness. I built a respectable career, bought a comfortable home, and convinced myself that being busy was enough. Friends slowly disappeared into families of their own, holiday gatherings became smaller every year, and birthdays turned into ordinary workdays that ended with frozen dinners and television playing only to silence the emptiness in the room. My grandfather watched all of this without criticizing me. Instead, he always welcomed me with a warm smile, homemade coffee, and stories that carried lessons hidden beneath ordinary memories. He often reminded me that a house could be full of expensive furniture and still feel empty if laughter never echoed through its halls. At the time I smiled politely, believing the old man simply belonged to another generation. I never imagined how deeply his words would haunt me after he was gone. The day we buried him, rain fell softly across the cemetery as though even the sky struggled to say goodbye. I stood beside his grave promising myself I would visit often, but life quickly swallowed those promises. Weeks became months, and months became years. His little farmhouse remained untouched except for occasional visits to keep it clean. Every room carried traces of his gentle presence. His favorite rocking chair still faced the front window, the old clock continued ticking faithfully, and the scent of cedar lingered inside the walls. Walking through that house always felt like stepping into a memory I wasn't ready to leave behind. Everything changed one quiet Saturday afternoon when I returned to organize the attic. Hidden among dusty boxes filled with photographs and handwritten journals, I noticed someone standing near the doorway. She introduced herself as Emma, the granddaughter of my grandfather's closest neighbor. I remembered seeing her years earlier during summer visits, though we had barely exchanged more than a few words. She explained that she had been helping care for the neighboring property after her grandmother's passing and had seen my car outside. We spent hours sorting old books, laughing over faded photographs, and remembering stories that only our grandparents could have told. As the afternoon sunlight poured through the attic window, Emma carefully unfolded a yellowed letter she had found tucked inside one of my grandfather's journals. She hesitated before sharing what he had once told her during one of their conversations. He had smiled kindly and said that I wasn't lonely because life had been unfair. I was lonely because I believed carrying every burden alone somehow made me stronger. Then he added something she admitted she never forgot. He quietly said that one day I would need someone willing to remind me how to live again because even the strongest hearts eventually grow tired of beating alone. When she confessed those words, emotion overwhelmed both of us. I stared at the old handwriting covering the pages and suddenly understood why my grandfather had never pressured me. He knew advice only mattered when a person was finally ready to hear it. The silence between Emma and me wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful, almost sacred, as though an invisible hand had gently guided two grieving souls into the same room at exactly the right moment. Over the following weeks, our friendship grew naturally. We restored the farmhouse together, planted flowers beside the porch, repainted weathered fences, and discovered joy in ordinary moments neither of us expected to treasure. She shared stories about losing her parents at a young age, while I admitted how deeply I had hidden behind work to avoid facing loneliness. Neither of us tried to rescue the other. We simply listened, and somehow that became enough. The seasons slowly changed. Spring blossoms gave way to golden summer evenings, then colorful autumn afternoons. The farmhouse transformed into a place filled with warmth instead of sorrow. Friends began visiting again. Laughter returned to rooms that had known only silence. Every improvement we made seemed to honor the man who had quietly believed that broken hearts could heal if given patience, compassion, and someone willing to stay. One evening we sat on the old wooden porch watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant shades of orange and crimson. I realized I no longer dreaded going home because home was no longer just a building. It had become a feeling created by shared meals, honest conversations, and simple moments that asked for nothing except gratitude. My grandfather had spent his life teaching that love wasn't found in dramatic gestures but in everyday faithfulness, and for the first time I truly understood his wisdom. If this story has touched your heart so far, please support the video by liking it, sharing it with friends and family, and subscribing to Love and Destiny. Every interaction helps these stories of hope and second chances reach someone who may need them today. Before we reach the ending, tell us in the comments, do you believe destiny can bring two people together through the love and wisdom of someone who is no longer here? Months later, standing beneath the same oak tree where my grandfather used to greet every visitor, I looked at Emma and realized the emptiness I had carried for years had quietly been replaced with peace. My grandfather had never tried to choose my future for me. He had simply believed that love arrives when pride finally steps aside. As I held Emma's hand and looked toward the farmhouse glowing warmly in the evening light, I smiled through grateful tears. The woman who whispered my grandfather's unforgettable words hadn't changed my life with a grand speech. She changed it by reminding me that the people who truly love us never stop guiding us, even after they're gone. Sometimes destiny doesn't shout. Sometimes it arrives in a whisper, carrying the wisdom of someone who loved us enough to see the future before we ever could.